Big chapter today, so I need to get started. Uh, Today we're going to talk about other addictions other than drug addictions, obsessive behavior, compulsive behavior. So that's what we're dealing with today. There we go. All right. Other drugs, inhalants, volatile liquids. You can inhale volatile liquids, aerosol sprays, gases that come in pressurized tanks. These substances have many of the same psychoactive effects of street drugs. Sports drugs, natural and synthetic substances, they accelerate the healing of injuries, they increase performance, they alter the state of the athlete's consciousness. Hard to classify drugs, there are animal extracts, herbal preparations, smart drugs and drinks, and nootropics. They've been used for their psychoactive effects. They've been used to improve mental health. They've been used to improve physical health. Inhalants are used because the user finds it stupefying. They find it intoxicating, and occasionally they are psychedelic. There are three main groups of inhalants: volatile solvents and aerosols, volatile nitrites, and anesthetics. Most of the volatile solvents and aerosols are synthesized from petroleum and mixed with other chemicals. Hydrocarbons are found in glues, gasoline, and nail polish remover. Many aerosols are inhaled for their propellants rather than their ascribed contents. Other volatile organic compounds include esters, ketones, alcohols, and glycols. The volatile nitrites include butyl and amyl nitrite. These drugs are used as vasodilators for people with heart problems. They have also been used in air fresheners. Illicitly, they are used recreationally at parties, but especially in sexual situations. Anesthetics are used to block pain or induce unconsciousness for medical procedures. Nitrous oxide is used in dentistry for anxious patients who do not wish to use Novocaine. Also called laughing gas, it is not uncommonly used at parties to induce giddiness and euphoria. The most widely used inhalants are nitrous oxide, nitrites, gasoline, glue, spray paint, aerosol sprays, lacquer thinner, and correction fluid. And for this reason, correction fluid is now controlled. Inhalants are sought because they are quick acting with intense effects. They enter the bloodstream within 7 to 10 seconds and may last from a few minutes to an hour. They're cheap, they're readily available and widespread. There are more than 1,500 chemical products that can be inhaled for their psychoactive effects. They're readily accessible to children and adolescents, as many exist in any garage or home. They have more direct toxic effects on body tissue. There is a lack of awareness of inhalants as drug problems. Inhalant abuse is most prevalent among adolescents. Inhalants account for from 700 to 1,200 deaths in the United States per year. This is a worldwide problem as cheap highs are sought by the young, the poor, street children, recent migrants to cities, indigenous peoples, and children of parents who work at home with volatile chemicals. The inhalant of choice in many poor countries is gasoline because of its availability. Inhalants are most likely abused by 12 to 17-year-olds and more females than males. This problem was especially serious in the 1990s, but has since dissipated. American Indian and white adolescents are more likely to use inhalants than blacks or Asians. There are 7 methods of using. Sniffing is breathing in the inhalant through the nose directly from the container. Huffing is soaking material and putting the material over the mouth and nose. Bagging is soaking the material and placing the material in a bag to be inhaled through the nose or mouth. Spraying the inhalant directly into the nose or mouth. Balloons and crackers, puncturing a can of inhalant and capturing it in a balloon for inhaling. Balloons and crackers. Masking, spraying an aerosol in a bag and then putting the bag over your head and just putting it on your clothing. Volatile solvents are carbon and hydrocarbon based compounds that turn to gas at room temperature. Gasoline, gasoline additives, paints, especially metallic paints, kerosene, air dusters, paint thinners, lacquers, nail polish removers, spot removers, glues and plastic cements, and lighter fluid. Volatile solvents are absorbed very rapidly into the blood and move to the heart, brain, and liver within 7 to 10 seconds. It causes temporary stimulation, an elevated mood, reduced inhibitions, impulsiveness, excitement, irritability, dizziness, slurred speech, unsteady gait, and drowsiness. These inhalants are exhaled by the lungs and excreted by the kidneys. After prolonged inhalation, the user may experience delirium with confusion, psychomotor clumsiness, emotional instability, impaired thinking, and maybe coma. Long-term effects of inhalant use: arrhythmias and myocarditis, pulmonary hypertension, respiratory distress, and lowered breathing capacity, liver toxicity, carboxyhemoglobin may cause brain damage, some inhalants may cause neonatal growth retardation, odd facial features, and tremors in newborns. While most huffers move on to other drugs, those who stay with inhalants can expect some fairly debilitating effects: poor coordination characteristics, inability to concentrate, weakness, disorientation, weight loss, memory loss due to hippocampal interference, poor problem solving, difficulty controlling one's behavior, blood irregularities, and chromosomal damage. Chronic huffers tend to have antisocial personality disorder, but it is not sure whether the huffing causes the behavior or the environment. These individuals also tend to use whatever drugs they come across. The most widely abused substance is toluene, methylbenzene, because it is such a good accelerant and is in so many products. Glue, drying agents, solvents, thinners, paints, inks, cleaning agents, these all have toluene in them. 65% of chronic abusers of toluene have neurological damage. There you go. That's how you do it. Toluene and benzene. The huffer's high. Trichloroethylene, or TCE, is another common solvent found in substances used for huffing. Correction fluid paints, metal degreasers, spot removers, extracting oils and fats from vegetables. It causes depression and moderate hallucinations. If used heavily, it can cause neuropathy. Some of these neuropathies can be permanent. And of course, that's really serious stuff. Once you've got neuropathy, it's all over with. That's all you're going to have it for the rest of your life. N-hexane and methylbutyl ketone, also known as NBK, are solvents used for glues, solvents used for adhesives, diluents for plastics, diluents for rubber, in the production of laminated products, as a paint thinner, as a solvent for dyes. N-hexane and NBK have been shown to cause neurological damage, especially in the brain. Recovery can take up to 3 years. Small molecule alkanes are gaseous at room temperature and cause cardiac arrhythmias and sudden death, and include methane, ethane, butane, and propane. Large molecule alkanes are also neurotoxic and include hexane and pentane. Of course, these you see all the time: methane, ethane, butane, and propane are very common. The large molecule alkanes are not that common: hexane and pentane. Gasoline is readily available and used as an inhalant, especially on American Indian reservations. The effect only lasts 3 to 5 minutes. Now, you may say, wait a minute, we live on a reservation and we don't use it here. The reality is it's very commonly used in North and South Dakota. And since there are so many reservations up there, that's what they're really talking about. Not only are the hydrocarbons neurotoxic, but the solvents, metals, and additives can cause problems as well. Insomnia, tremors, anorexia, paralysis, lead poisoning, which affects your brain, your liver, your bone marrow, kidney, and lung. It does lung damage. Residual effects might last for 5 to 6 hours. Over half of all inhalant deaths are due to gasoline inhaling. Alcohols are the most frequently abused inhalant solvents. Methanol, ethanol, and isopropanol. When inhaled, alcohols can produce a mild high along with nausea, vertigo, weakness, vomiting, headaches, and abdominal cramping. Huffing alcohol. What an interesting idea. For ER personnel, it is important to know the warning signs of solvent abuse. The individual comes in with headaches, chemical odor on the body or clothes, and of course, if you're sensitive to smells, this is the first thing that you come in contact with is the chemical odor coming off the individual, especially when they breathe. It's coming out of their pores, it's coming out of their lungs. Red, glassy, or watery eyes with dilated pupils, nosebleeds, inflamed nose, rashes around the nose or mouth, slow, thick, or slurred speech, staggering gait, disorientation, lack of coordination, pains in the chest and stomach, fatigue, nausea, shortness of breath, loss of appetite, intoxication, irritability and aggression, seizure, and coma. Nitrites have been used as medicines, especially heart stimulators, for angina since the 19th century. Alkyl nitrite, isomyl nitrite, butyl nitrite, isobutyl nitrite, isopropyl nitrite, and cyclohexyl nitrite. These are all nitrites. And of course, you can use them to stimulate the heart to start beating again, or for the pain to go away. Nitrites dilate blood vessels so that organs can receive more blood. This is usually done for the heart during angina attacks or with cyanide poisoning. It takes 7 to 10 seconds for the effects to take place and lasts for 60 to 70 seconds. The blood pressure lowers and hits its apogee at 30 seconds and returns to normal at 90 seconds. Nitrites are sometimes called poppers. Nitrites cause a feeling of fullness in the head, gives you a rush, mild euphoria, dizziness, giddiness. As the inhalant burns off, they might experience headaches, nausea, vomiting, or chills. Excessive abuse may cause oxygen deprivation, fainting or passing out, temporary asphyxiation. Overdoses do occur and necessitate taking the victim away from the nitrite. CPR might be necessary to maintain heart rhythm and respiration. Chronic users will have a reduced oxygen carrying capacity due to methemoglobin. Nitrites are used to enhance sexual activity by increasing blood flow to sexual parts and relaxation of smooth muscles. This is especially necessary when the anal sphincter requires relaxation during anal intercourse. Unfortunately, nitrites impair the immune system by inhibiting the functioning of white cells. Nitrites also convert nitrosamines, which are cancer-causing chemicals. Poppers, when used with Viagra, cause lowered blood pressure in users since both medications lower the blood pressure. When these two drugs are used with methamphetamine, people have been known to faint or even die. Volatile nitrite abusers are notorious for multiple drug use. 2/3 use at least 3 or other inhalants. 1/3 abuse alcohol. 1/3 abuse drugs other than inhalants. And of course, it can kill you. Anesthetics are used to slow the CNS and stop pain from reaching the brain. Anesthetics also cause euphoric effects. When abused, one of the first anesthetics to be abused was nitrous oxide, of course. Recently, nitrous oxide has been abused along with ecstasy to accelerate the rush and to enhance the effects. Nitrous oxide is sold in small plastic canisters to be used in cooking. Nitrous oxide's effects include dizziness, giddiness, and disorientation, silly laughter, buzzing and throbbing in the ears, visual hallucinations, confusion and headache, feeling that one is about to pass out, impaired motor skills and fainting. The effects only last 2 to 3 minutes. Cognitive functioning is impaired with the drug, but returns to normal after 5 minutes. My son is a chef, and he's worked in kitchens before where there were people that were abusing this stuff. He said that it's really kind of interesting because people will start laughing, but it's not a normal laugh. It's a high pitched laugh, and it's a giggly high pitched laugh, like they're trying to act like a little girl. It's really kind of strange. So you'll see these great big guys, and all of a sudden they're huffing this nitrous oxide, and the next thing you know, they're twittering, they're twittering like little girls. Nitrous oxide's effects include dizziness, giddiness, and disorientation, silly laughter, buzzing and throbbing in the ears, visual hallucinations, confusion and headache, feeling that one is about to pass out, impaired motor skills and fainting. The effects only last 2 to 3 minutes. Cognitive functioning is impaired with the drug, but returns to normal after about 5 minutes. Of course, that's not something that you want in the kitchen, but it's not that uncommon for these people to use this stuff. Long-term exposure can cause peripheral and central nerve cell damage due to lack of oxygen. Nitrous oxide replaces oxygen in the blood. Long-term exposure will lead to loss of balance, loss of dexterity, overall weakness, numbness in the arms and the legs, cardiac arrhythmias, asphyxia, seizures, and death. There we go. And it doesn't last very long. Grab the balloon and we go again. Halathane is rarely used in the West. It is widely used in third world countries because it is inexpensive and works very rapidly. This anesthetic is used primarily in veterinary procedures. It is most frequently abused by hospital personnel. When you see, if you're watching a procedure, there was a dog that needed his, it was a Shih Tzu, and his hair had grown so much that it was impeding him. He was a stray dog. So the vets picked him up and they were cutting it off of him, but they needed to anesthetize him while they did. Well, they used halathane. You could tell because they had a mask over his face, and it was a relatively constant thing to keep him anesthetized. Anyway, that's how they use halathane. Inhalants cause less physical and psychological dependence than other depressants. Inhalants cause cognitive impairments that hinder comprehension and recovery. Inhalants will sometimes cause a cross-tolerance to other depressants, especially alcohol, if used chronically. Inhalants are seen as low class among the drug-using community. 3 categories of drugs. Now we're going to talk about sports and drugs. 3 categories of drugs are used in sports. Therapeutic drugs used for specific medical problems and administered through proper medical supervision. Analgesics, muscle relaxants, anti-inflammatories, and asthma medications. Ergogenic drugs, performance-enhancing drugs, steroids, human growth hormone, blood doping, and stimulants, and then recreational and mood-altering drugs. Those are the 3 categories of drugs used in sports. Athletes use drugs because they perceive drugs as a quick way to put on pounds and muscle, increase stamina, get up for a game, relieve pain, and to keep up with other athletes who use drugs. Analgesics and anesthetics are used to deaden pain and include both topical, the alcohols ethanol and methanol, procaine, and lidocaine. I was watching a ball game last night, as a matter of fact, and this guy fouled a ball off of his foot. They came out and they sprayed it topical on his foot. They sprayed it through his sock. But what was happening was it was just a local. They were trying to deaden the pain so we could go ahead and play. Oral aspirin, ibuprofen, acetaminophen, hydrocodone, Vicodin, meperidine, Demerol, morphine, codeine, propoxyphene, also known as Darvon. The biggest problem with analgesics and anesthetics is that they take away the pain without repairing the damage, and for that reason, you can damage your you can injure yourself even worse because you can't feel the pain. That pain is to tell you that to stop. Okay, so if you've got pain and you deaden it, then potentially you're going to really hurt yourself a lot worse. Muscle relaxants are drugs that depress the neural activity within skeletal muscles and are used to treat muscle strains, ligament strains, muscle spasms, tremors, or shaking. Carisperidol, soma and vanadom, methocarbamol, robaxin, and benzodiazepines, diazepam, Valium, clonazepam, which is Klonopin, and chlordiazepoxide, which is Librium. Anti-inflammatory drugs lessen pain as well as control inflammation. These drugs come in two classes: non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs, also known as NSAIDs. They include aspirin, ibuprofen, indocin, indomethacin, butazolidine. I've never heard of this stuff. Phenobutazone. I've never used it. Clinaril, Solindec, and Celecoxib, Celebrex. Of course, everybody's heard of Celebrex. And the corticosteroids, prednisone and cortisone. Those are the corticosteroids. So you have NSAIDs and you have corticosteroids of anti-inflammatories. Both types of anti-inflammatories have their problems. NSAIDs, aspirin, and ibuprofen cause ulcers and kidney problems. Celebrex is only recommended for arthritis and may cause heart and gastrointestinal problems. Corticosteroids can cause water retention, bone thinning, muscle and tendon weakness, delayed skin healing, vertigo, headaches, glaucoma, psychosis at high doses. And this is something you've got to be really careful about. If you're taking steroids, it actually causes your muscle and tendons to weaken. It can build up muscles, but it's very likely that you're going to tear a tendon or tear a muscle because your muscles are stronger than your bones can support. And so what we see with people that take steroids a lot of times is that they actually tear their muscle away from the bone. Asthma medications open air passages. 10% of the general population has asthma. Asthma is often aggravated by heavy exercise and stress. Exercise-induced asthma occurs 11 to 23% of athletes. Most asthma medications used by athletes are beta-2 agonists. Clenbuterol is banned during competition. You can't use it if you're an athlete. And albuterol. These medications increase muscle energy and growth. So people will use them, say they have asthma, and then they'll use them as steroids. Ergogenic drugs include anabolic steroids, stimulants, human growth hormone, pre-steroids, beta blockers, and erythropoietin. Ergogenic techniques include blood doping, soda doping, herbal medicines, and weight loss. Wow, that's all the big guys. Anabolic steroids are synthetic androgens and are used by muscle building for muscle building and muscle repair. These drugs are used routinely in medicine to treat testosterone insufficiency, delayed puberty, wasting diseases, osteoporosis, certain types of anemia, some breast cancers, and endometriosis. When athletes take steroids, they experience increased body weight, lean muscle mass, muscular strength, stamina, aggressiveness, and confidence. Athletes taking anabolic steroids will take 20 to 200 times the prescribed daily dosage. And I think that's what's happened here, and here, and here. Anabolic steroid users will use the drugs from 4 to 18-week cycles. This is done to give the body a chance to recover from the drug use or to escape detection of use. Cycling steroids usually involves using more than one kind of drug. 82% of cyclers cycle 3 or more different steroids at a time. 30% use 7 or more steroids at a time. Immediate effects of steroid use is increased muscle mass and improved muscle tone. Having muscle too large and strong for the bone and tendon structure may cause an overstressing of the muscle. And this causes ruptured tendons and damaged ligaments. Users often, my daughter had a friend who was a bodybuilder, and one time he tore his pec. It's almost impossible to tear your pectoralis muscle. There's two sets. There's a pectoralis minor and a pectoralis major. Pectoralis major is a vertical muscle, and the pectoralis minor is underneath the pectoralis major. The part that sticks out is the pectoralis major, of course. But you've got a pectoralis minor that's underneath, and he tore the pectoralis minor away from the bone because he was using steroids. And of course, he claimed he wasn't using steroids, but it's almost impossible to do this. And the only way you could do this is if you're taking steroids. So he was lying. Users often complain of feeling bloated. They have water retention. That's actually why your muscles look big, is because when you lift, they will accumulate water, and that makes them look bigger. So if you want to know if your muscles are growing bigger, you have to wait a couple days before the water goes away. It's one of the reasons that you need to drink water while you're actually lifting weights. If you don't drink enough, then you're going to be sore the next day because your muscles are seeking water. You also might get cramps. Your muscles will seize up because they're not getting enough water. Anabolic steroids suppress the natural production of testosterone, enlarge breasts, nipple changes, decreased size of the sexual organs, impaired sexual function, cystic acne growth, thinning hair, and more rapid balding. And this is what cystic acne looks like. You get it all over your body. This is one of the reasons why a lot of bodybuilders they wear so much clothes. You'd think they want to show off their muscles, but the reality is, well, yeah, this guy's okay, that guy's okay. Anyway, yeah, we're not looking at their backs, though. A lot of times this stuff is on your back. Anyway, it's what cystic acne looks like. The balding is kind of an interesting thing. These guys haven't lost their hair yet, I don't think. Is there any of them that are bald? We saw this in basketball players in the 80s and 90s. All of a sudden, everybody was shaving their heads. Okay, there's a lot of different ways you can look at that. Anyway, female athletes also used anabolic steroids for muscle growth and other masculinizing effects, though some are unwanted. Increased facial hair, decreased breast size, lowered voice, clitoral enlargement, cystic acne growth again, and thinning hair, which is always attractive on a woman. Most of these masculinizing effects are irreversible. So once they start balding, they will just continue. There you go. This is a lady who decided to take steroids for competition. There's another lady that decided to take steroids for competition. And another lady. And another lady. She looked okay in 2005. I don't know. You can see that all these ladies, their faces are far more masculinized once they start taking steroids. Okay. There you go. Wow. She looks pretty butch, doesn't she? I'm sorry. She looks very masculine. Anabolic steroids increase the cholesterol of the user, especially the bad cholesterol, the LDL. At the same time, steroid lowers the good cholesterol, or HDL. Steroid users have an uncommon amount of cardiovascular problems, hypertension, thrombosis, cardiomyopathy. Because steroids encourage cell growth, they may equally encourage cancer cell growth. I had a heart attack in 2010. Didn't have anything to do with steroids. It had to do with weightlifting. Because I lifted weights and I stressed my body out like that. It expanded my blood vessels on my heart. It's something that you see from time to time with select individuals, and it folded over. My blood vessel folded over. So what they had to do is put a stent in there and straighten that out, straighten out that unnatural curve that I had. It had kind of collapsed on top of itself. Anyway, that's what my heart problems are from being healthy. That's not that funny. Anabolic steroids do have an impact on the user's mental state, at first supporting more aggressive and confident behavior. As use continues, confidence swings to aggressiveness, to emotional instability, to rage, to hypomania, to depression, to psychotic symptoms, to paranoia. This is really not that uncommon for somebody who is a heavy steroid user to become paranoid, and this process can take place over a matter of weeks, where they go from confidence all the way down to paranoia. This emotional cycling is known as roid rage and is more pronounced in individuals who have anger issues already. The other thing that you need to remember about steroid use is that these individuals, one of the aspects of these that is happening with these individuals is their sexual parts are shrinking. Their testicles and their penis, their clitoris is enlarging if they're a female. So they're actually changing their gender. They're swapping genders. So looking muscular does not always mean that you're going to be a hypersexualized. And this is part of this paranoia that takes place. While some people report a slight euphoria when taking anabolic steroids, it is thought by researchers that this is due to anticipation of intense activity rather than actual addiction. Some users do report withdrawal symptoms, and in fact, some users will use low doses during cycling to maintain sanity. There is some animal study of evidence that steroid use is addictive, but stimulants are taken by athletes to make them more alert, to make them feel more confident, and to make them stronger. Much of the increase in ability, when taking amphetamines, is increased focus and aggressiveness. Heavy usage can lead to blood pressure problems, exhaustion, and malnutrition. Uh, Amphetamines, sure, there are people that take amphetamines, but a lot of bodybuilders will use caffeine, mega doses of caffeine. They'll drink cups of coffee before they go in and exercise, and this theoretically helps them do a more intense workout. Caffeine is a mild stimulant used by some athletes. That's what I was just saying. At low doses, it increases wakefulness, mental alertness, slightly increases endurance, muscle contraction, digestive disturbances, urine output causing dehydration. And this is sometimes a problem. Ephedra or mahuang and ephedrine are mild stimulants used by some athletes. These substances were found in many over-the-counter medicines. Not everyone is sensitive to these medications, but to those who are, they cause jitteriness, anxiety, headaches, high blood pressure, cardiac arrhythmia, poor digestion, and overheating. This is a baseball pitcher that used ephedra, and it killed him. He had cardiac arrhythmia, and he died. Chewing tobacco used to be a mainstay in Major League Baseball parks. From the beginning of baseball until into the 1980s, many, if not most, baseball players maintained a chaw of tobacco in their cheeks almost constantly during a game. Many baseball icons of the past died of throat or esophageal cancer. It is rarely seen today. And there you go. This is Pablo Sandoval. This is obviously Nellie Fox. Nellie Fox was notorious for having a huge chaw of tobacco in his mouth. Yeah, he died of esophageal cancer. This is Pablo Sandoval. He's still playing today. He uses snuff. He's not playing for the Giants anymore. He's playing for Atlanta, or he was the last I heard. Anyway, he's another individual that uses. He still uses. It's banned in many baseball parks, so I'm not sure if he's using down in Atlanta or not. Human growth hormone is a hormone produced by pituitary gland to stimulate growth in children. It is prescribed for children who are of unusually small stature to stimulate growth, and for people with wasting diseases like AIDS to build strength. It is used by athletes because it increases muscle mass, skin thickness, connective tissue in muscles, acromegaly, cardiovascular disease, decreased sexual desire, goiter, menstrual disorders, and impotence, and it decreases lifespan up to 20 years. This is a baseball player from the Brewers. I'm trying to think of what his name is. I just had it. It was right on the tip of my tongue. Anyway, he was the MVP one year, and then within months he was discovered having growth hormone in his system, excessive growth hormone in his system. I'm sorry that I can't think of his name. Anyway, he was banned for half a season. This is a season after he was the MVP. Anyway, that's what acromegaly looks like. A thickening of the jaw. It has to do with hypermasculinity. It leads to a lot of physical problems, like mostly heart problems that the individual dies from. The guy that played Lurch had acromegaly. Androstenedione, andro, and dehydroepiandrosterone, DHEA, are natural hormone precursors to testosterone. Neither of these supplements have been found to do more than increase testosterone levels in men with abnormally low testosterone levels. They also seem to increase HDLs and the female hormone estradiol. Beta blockers are medications prescribed to lower blood pressure, decrease heart rate, prevent arrhythmias, reduce eye pressure, and reduce eye pressure. They work by blocking adrenaline from exciting the heart. They also calm the individual by blocking nerve cells in the brain. Beta blockers are used by athletes who require precision and concentration, like archers, participants in rifle shooting competitions, ski jumpers, and divers. Beta blockers do have their problems, as they cause fatigue, lethargy, dangerously low blood pressure, gastritis, occasional nausea, vomiting, temporary impotence. They may intensify asthma. They intensify heart rate problems that may kill the user. And of course, that is a problem. Erythropoietin, or EPO, is a medication that is given to individuals to promote red blood cell production. My sister had cancer, and she was taking chemotherapy. And the chemotherapy stopped her long bones from producing red blood cells. So from time to time, she would become severely anemic. And when that happened, because she wasn't producing red blood cells, they had to give her erythropoietin to bring back to increase the amount of red cells coming out of her long bones. Anyway, it worked. She always was all peppy after she had a shot of erythropoietin. It is often given to individuals who are going through chemotherapy to induce their bone marrow to produce replacement RBCs due to their problem. EPO is used by athletes to increase stamina, though this unnatural thickening of the blood can lead to blood clots, which in turn might lead to strokes or heart attacks. A similar problem is blood doping, where the athlete stores their own blood prior to competition and then they are administered the packed red blood cells to increase the stamina of the individual. This technique is used in endurance sports such as cycling, long distance running, and cross country skiing. And here's an individual getting, he's actually getting blood, so he's getting his blood back. Athletes will use just about any substance that will give them a competitive edge: herbs, animal extracts, vitamins, minerals, proteins. Unfortunately, some of these items may contain banned chemicals and cause the athlete a great deal of trouble. One dietary supplement used by athletes is creatine. Creatine is an amino acid that occurs naturally in the human body as well as in fish and meats. Creatine is used because it delays muscle fatigue, stores energy that can be used in short bursts, extends the amount of time a person can work out. It helps muscles recover faster. Problems come when it is overused, causes dehydration, stomach cramps, nausea and diarrhea, muscle pulls and strains, and kidney problems. And this is what somebody looks like. This is what they look like on day one. 6 days later, after lifting every day, this is what they looked like when they were taking creatine. Why did they take creatine? Because it helped them recover faster. So they were able to lift more weight and they were able to lift more frequently. You usually need to wait a couple days after you lift to work that muscle group again because you have torn down the muscles and now you need to build them back up. So you need to rest, and that's usually what people do. They'll give themselves a couple days. That's the natural way of doing it. You just allow your body to recover. But if you use steroids or you use creatine, you don't have to do that. You can lift every day. Whoops, I'm sorry. Gamma hydroxybutyrate, GHB, was used in the 1980s and early 1990s as a fat burner, as an anabolic agent, as a sleep aid, as a muscle definer, as plant growth supplement, as a psychedelic. Picked up by sexual predators as a date rape drug, it is now only used legally as medication for muscle weakness. And here's a guy dropping GHB in two ladies' drinks. What a sweetie. Some athletes will consume sodium bicarbonate 30 minutes prior to exercising to decrease the development of acidosis. This works for shorter events that take place within 10 minutes, but not for longer endurance events. It can cause diarrhea and water retention. Why are they doing this? Because you get a buildup of acetic acid in your muscles, and that's what makes your muscles cramp up. So if you take the sodium bicarbonate 30 minutes before you run, if you're a sprinter, then your muscles don't seize up on you. They don't tie up on you. Now this would work for you don't need it for a 100-yard dash usually, depending on how old you are. But you might need it for a 200-meter dash or a 400-meter dash, where your muscles very commonly will seize up at the end of the race because of problems. Athletes trying to make weight will resort to various techniques to drop unwanted pounds. They'll use diuretics, laxatives, exercise, fasting, self-induced vomiting, excessive sweating in the sauna, and stimulants. Some athletes will lose 3 to 5% of their body weight in a couple days. You might ask yourself, why are they doing this? It usually has to do with wrestlers, not with baseball players, football players. They want to be as big as they possibly can be. But in wrestling, of course, you need to make weight. Anorexia and bulimia are not uncommon among athletes who are potentially trying to make unrealistic weight levels. Another problem with weight maintenance is the opposite of anorexia, muscle dysmorphia, where the individual becomes obsessed with muscle development as they see themselves as too weak whenever they look in the mirror. These individuals are more likely to take copious supplements and steroids to combat their body's weaknesses. Athletes will often use diuretics to lose weight rapidly. to limit the bloating caused by steroids by sucking the water out of their system to avoid detection of the illegal drugs, to lose weight to look thinner. Athletes need to monitor their use of diuretics because of the possibility of dehydration, leading to heat stroke and organ damage. Weightlifters will take adrenaline supplements combined with amyl or isobutyl nitrite to increase strength. It unfortunately can cause dizziness, rapid heartbeat, and hypertension. Bee pollen is sometimes taken as a supplement, a way of boosting energy levels, digestion, and reduce stress. Studies do not support any benefits of bee pollen, even though some people swear by it. Some athletes will take calcium pangamate as a supplement. This chemical combination is sometimes referred to as vitamin B15 and pingamic acid. Or maybe it's pingamic acid. It is refuted to keep muscle tissue better oxygenated, though there is no scientific research to back up the claim. This substance is a known carcinogen. Not the best idea in the world, is it? Cripoheptadine periactin is reputed to be a steroid-like bodybuilder and has been used to increase body weight and muscle strength. This drug is an antihistamine. It acts as a serotonin and histamine antagonist, and increases muscle mass and strength by making the individual hungry. It actually merely increases the user's appetite and has the added side effect of decreased performance, sweating, and sedation. You're blocking your serotonin. What does that do to you? It makes you depressed. How smart. Drabapoetin, Arnacep is a medication developed to treat chronic anemia. Just like erythropoietin, the drug increases RBCs and thus the oxygen carrying capacity of the athlete's blood. Human chorionic gonadotropin is a substance produced by fetuses to protect themselves from their mother's immune system. HCG, along with clomiphene or tamoxifen, is taken by steroid users to restart their own body's testosterone production. This substance also blocks the increased effects of estrogen in the male body. The drug can have an impact on the liver and the reproductive system. Probably not the best idea. There was a baseball player that was caught with HCG in their system. There's no reason for you to have HCG in your system, but he was a baseball player. It was Manny Ramirez. Gee, I remembered a baseball player's name. Modafinil Provigil acts as a stimulant and is used to treat narcolepsy. Athletes using the steroid THG will take the drug to mask the steroid. Orethine and arginine are amino acids taken to increase muscle mass because it is reputed that they cause an abnormal release of HGH. We have HGH in our system all the time, but when somebody takes a HGH as a supplement, they have an excessive amount of HGH in their body, and this is not normal. Primagen is used in Europe to facilitate the release of steroids in the body. Vitamin B12 is used to ward off illnesses and provide extra energy. It can also be used to speed the recovery from a hangover. We used to have vitamin B12 shots in a clinic that I was working in Oklahoma. This was in Chandler, Oklahoma. We would give it to women when they came in and complained that they didn't have any energy. We'd give them a vitamin B12 shot. And sometimes estrogen or estradiol, but we had a vitamin B12 shot. We gave him something else, vitamin B1, I think. Anyway, vitamin B12 is red, and the other stuff was yellow. You mix it together, and you got this orange mixture. It was really kind of an interesting shot. As has been seen, athletes will do just about anything and take just about anything to improve their performance on the athletic field. Athletes will use stimulants to boost their performance, from innocuous caffeine and tobacco to the more destructive amphetamines. Athletes will use sedative hypnotics, especially Xanax, to unwind from the stresses of competition. Sometimes these drugs are used to counteract the stimulants they have taken to perform. The most widely used depressant by athletes is alcohol. While in low doses, the substance does not hinder performance. In most cases, alcohol is used as a reward for performance, as a way to unwind, or as a consolation after a disappointment. Marijuana is contraindicated for performance, though when used in the right mood, might actually improve performance. Marijuana doesn't help athletes because it lowers your blood pressure, causing fainting during competition. It inhibits sweating, which might lead to heat prostration during exercise, decreasing tracking ability, and this is really kind of serious. I told you about playing in that softball tournament where some of the kids were smoking pot, and by golly, we almost knocked them all out of the game. There were some pretty bad injuries. You felt bad about hitting the ball to somebody because they would stick their hands out after the ball had already passed them, and then they'd get hit in the face or whatever. Decreasing tracking ability hinders the ability to do complex tasks, diminishes hand-eye coordination, decreases oxygen intake. It is banned substance by the NCAA. It is illegal, and well, it's illegal in 30 states now. Arizona has just legalized recreational marijuana because marijuana is fat soluble. It continues to impair 1 to 2 days after use. There are no limits to what people will do to get high. People have been known to smoke aspirin, to chew dandelion roots, to drink gasoline. This is weird. They mix orange juice with gasoline, and they call it Montana gin. And evidently it tastes really nasty, but people will drink it. They drink rubbing alcohol, drink hydrogen peroxide. They put Anbesol, which is a topical anesthetic, in their eyes. They smoke toad secretions. Mortuaries have to hide their supplies of the fluid they use to embalm bodies, formaldehyde. When inhaled, the substance acts as a depressant and a psychedelic, but can also be used to manufacture illicit drugs. When mixed with marijuana, the substance provides a PCP-like effect and is called clickers, clickums, fry, wet, and illy. Stupid. Raid, Lysol, and any hairspray are sometimes used for their alcohol content. Raid has been used to spray on marijuana to intensify the effects of marijuana in a concoction known as cannade. Kava is a plant found in the South Pacific and South America. The root is crushed and a milky white exudate is extracted, which is drunk like alcohol. The drink is reputed to have similar effects as alcohol and acts as an anti-anxiety drug. It is said to have an unpleasant flavor and numbs the tongue and lips. Human saliva is used in its preparation. Okay. They put the saliva in there for its bacteria. And of course, then it ferments, and then, of course, you have alcohol. In some Arab countries, camels are force-fed marijuana. After going through the digestive process, the camel dung is smoked for its hashish content. The bufo genus of toads, the Colorado River toad, produces a psychedelic substance from its pores as a defense mechanism from attack. The toads are sometimes milked, and the resulting substance is smeared on cigarettes and smoked for their psychedelic effects. All natural medications started out as herbal preparations concocted by shamans, medicine men, wizards, or physicians. Some of these herbs merely had a placebo effect, while others have been proven to contain chemical structures that have great benefits for mankind. For example, quinine was developed from the cinchona tree to fight malaria. The search for the fountain of youth, or merely drugs that will help the individual recover from a hard night of drinking, have recently come to the fore as smart drugs, drinks, and nootropics. Smart drugs, drinks, and nootropics are drugs, nutrients, vitamins, extracts, herbal potions such as ginseng, ginkgo biloba, and caffeine, and amino acids. And the truth is, I take ginseng and ginkgo biloba every day, and I probably drink enough caffeine. Anyway, yeah, I do it too. These drugs are reputed to boost intelligence, improve memory, sharpen attention, increase concentration, detoxify the body, energize the user, and reverse the aging process. And of course, I want to stay alive as long as anybody does. And that's one of the reasons why I take ginseng and ginkgo biloba. Ginseng is supposed to give you energy, and ginkgo biloba is supposed to slow down the aging process. New age smart drugs or nootropics include hydrogene, selagelene, vasopressin, 5-HT, modafinil, piracetam, oxiracetam. They improve your learning, they improve your memory and consolidation, and they improve memory retrieval. What else do I take to increase blood flow in my brain? Ginkgo is supposed to increase blood flow into your brain, as is L-carnitine. I take L-carnitine every day. That's why I'm so damn smart. My sister was becoming demented. She's always been demented. She's starting to lose her memory. Her biggest problem is she doesn't think a lot. Every day I read, I work on your stuff. I'm constantly trying to find out new things. She doesn't do that. She won't watch the news. There's a lot of things she doesn't do. She finds the news too depressing, so she doesn't watch the news. So nothing new is coming into her brain. And for that reason, you got to lose it. You got to use it or you're going to lose it. And I'm afraid she's lost it. So she wanted a drug she could take, and I told her, well, try L-carnitine and see if that works. I haven't talked to her lately, but it could be interesting. Compulsive disorders are repetitive behaviors that the individual appears not to have any control over. They come in two categories: impulse control disorders and compulsive gambling, which include compulsive gambling and hair pulling. That's what's happening with this lady. Compulsive disorders that have their own classifications, such as overeating, shopping, sexual behavior, internet use, watching television, pathological lying, shoplifting, and fire setting. Impulsive control disorders are actions that may be pleasurable in the beginning, but as the attempt to resist the impulse continues, becomes harmful to the individual or others. This disorder also has accompanying tension or arousal before the act is committed. After culmination of the act, the individual often feels gratification, pleasure, relief, and then possibly remorse and guilt for not controlling the behavior. Obsessive compulsive disorder is a repetitive activity where the goal is to reduce anxiety or distress caused by obsessive thoughts. The goal is rarely to provide pleasure or gratification and include compulsive hand washing, checking things, ordering, counting, and praying are all can be compulsive behaviors. Compulsive behaviors are engaged in for the same reason people compulsively use addictive drugs: instant rush, forget problems, control anxiety, oblige friends, self-medicate. These individuals are trying to alter their mood and change their state of consciousness. MRIs show that the same areas of the brain are activated when compulsive behavior is done as when drug use is anticipated or done. Compulsive behaviors, compulsive drug users are compulsive about their drug use. Gamblers gamble compulsively. Drug users develop a tolerance for their drug. Compulsive gamblers increase the bet amount when gambling compulsively, and this, of course, is a form of tolerance. Drug users have withdrawal symptoms after abstinence. Compulsive gamblers become restless when not gambling, and this is a form of withdrawal. Drug users continue to use despite adverse consequences. Compulsive gamblers continue gambling until they have used all their money, and of course, this is another form of abuse. They are drug users are in denial about their usage. Compulsive gamblers think they control their gambling and refuse to see the consequences, their form of denial. Drug users have a strong tendency to relapse. Compulsive gamblers will relapse whenever they have money again. So compulsive behaviors and drug usage is almost identical. One telling sign is that organizations like Gamblers Anonymous and Overeaters Anonymous use a 12-step program identical to the 12-step program set up by Alcoholics Anonymous. Addictive behavior involves a lack of individual control, and these organizations demonstrate the necessity to change their lifestyle and beliefs. Compulsive behavior can be triggered by various factors: genetic predisposition, environmental stress, the repetitive behavior itself. Substance abusers, compulsive gamblers, compulsive overeaters, and compulsive shoppers all show the same dopamine increase in the brain. Compulsive behavior does seem to run in families. Binge overeating has been shown to have a relationship with overactive 5-HT serotonin receptors. Twin studies support the strength of genetic factors leading to obesity. These connections were stronger than shared environmental pressures. Studies of adopted children supported the strength of genetic influences where such environmental factors as frequency and volume of meals, amount of snack food in the house, and level of exercise was less significant than heredity toward obesity. And it was hard to find a picture of adopted children, and this is the only one I could find that had talked about adopted children, so I apologize for that. Researchers have found a marker gene that shows a strong proclivity for addictive behavior, especially alcoholism, a DRD2A1 allele. It appears in only 19 to 21% of non-alcoholics, the DRD2A1 allele. 69% of severe alcoholics have this allele, 45% of compulsive overeaters, 48% of smokers, 52% of cocaine addicts, 51% of pathological gamblers, 76% of pathological gamblers with drug problems, 45% of people with Tourette's syndrome, and 49% of children with ADHD. They have this allele, the DRD2A1 allele. It is speculated that these individuals who have the DRD2A1 allele gene have a deficiency of dopamine receptor sites and therefore must seek excessive stimulation to force extra dopamine to be released in the reward reinforcement pathway to feel normal. Since their normal is less stimulating, they're easily bored. Stimulation allows them to feel pleasure. Compulsive gambling may be triggered by the plethora of venues to gamble: state lotteries, poker machines, internet betting, legal off-track betting, casinos on every corner. Compulsive overeating may be triggered by the plethora of fast food restaurants, lack of daily physical activity, fats and sugars in the foods that induce craving, parents overfeeding their children, chaotic childhoods that lead people to use food to relieve their depression. Compulsive sexual activity may be triggered by a plethora of sexual situations depicted on TV, latchkey kids with no supervision, children with no close emotional family connections, and abundance of internet pornography. Compulsive internet use may be triggered by expanding networks of games, massive multiplayer online role-playing games. Dedicated gamers will play online for an average of 8 hours a day, expanding networks of online gambling, and expanding networks of chat rooms. Compulsive shopping may be triggered by the ease of getting credit, the materialistic view of life. It isn't who you are, but what you have. A barrage of advertisements on TV, catalogs, 24-hour home shopping networks, internet shopping, internet auction sites. It has been observed that there is a history of emotional, physical, and sexual abuse in the lives of many of the individuals who suffer from compulsive behaviors. Engaging in behavior can lead to compulsive behavior. Engaging in the behavior can lead to compulsive behavior. A big payday when gambling eater takes in excess sugars and fats and changes the body's chemistry. Now they eat to be happy. Being able to buy something that the individual wants makes them shop with the anticipation that they will find another coveted item. participation in ritualized masturbation, compulsive viewing of pornography, or participation in other compulsive sexual behavior will make the individual avoid normal sexual behavior or emotional relationships. Compulsive gambling has skyrocketed in the last decade with poker tournaments being shown on television and online gambling available. Last year, gambling revenues in the United States topped $75 billion. Last year, gambling revenues worldwide topped $125 billion. Gamblers Anonymous define gambling as any betting or wagering for self or others, whether for money or not, no matter how slight or insignificant, whether the outcome is uncertain or depends upon chance or skill, constitutes gambling. Forms of gambling, casino-style gambling, poker, blackjack, craps, roulette, slot machines, video poker machines, horse and dog track racing, highlight, highlight. They only do highlight in Florida. I've never seen it anyplace else. Bingo and raffles, state-run lotteries and Keno, sports betting, both legal and illegal, Super Bowl office pool and betting on golf, schoolyard games like lag pennies and flip coins, bar games, liar's dice, stock speculation such as day trading, commodities and options, and internet gambling. These are all forms of gambling. Gambling has been around since the dawn of man. Gambling bones have been found in human habitation sites that date back 40,000 years. This is not an old world phenomenon. Mayan digs have found gambling implements that closely resemble the dice and bones of other civilizations. Along with gambling has come attempts at prohibition. India, 1000 BC, during the Roman Empire, it was only for the aristocracy. Louis the Ninth of France in 1255. Oh, they're prohibiting it. Henry VIII of England tried to prohibit gambling, and during the Victorian era in the United States. I was just reading an article in Archaeology Today. It's actually Archaeology Magazine. Anyway, they were talking about they've found gambling at Poverty Point in Louisiana, which is up on the Mississippi Delta. It's one of the oldest inhabited areas in the United States. So whatever indigenous people were here 20,000 years ago, they were doing gambling as well, and this was in the Americas, of course, in Louisiana. Poverty Point, look it up. Gambling came to the United States with the British, but the corruption and addictive behavior made the practice unpalatable, and it was banned. While it was banned in the East, as people moved across the Mississippi River, gambling was popular in the Wild West. Infected by the same corruption and Victorian morality, by 1910, it again was gone, even in the West. Gambling didn't return until the 1970s. Since then, Atlantic City and Las Vegas have become gambling meccas, and Indian casinos have changed gambling attitudes, bringing in more money than the cities combined. 48 states have some form of gambling. The only two states that don't have gambling are Utah and Hawaii, and both of them are strongly Mormon areas, which is really kind of interesting. When I was born in 1949. While I was growing up in the 50s and 60s, there was no gambling anywhere in the United States. And then in the 1970s, they allowed gambling in Las Vegas. They also allowed prostitution in Las Vegas, legalized prostitution. And then Atlantic City opened up, and then they started opening up Indian casinos. Indian casinos started out with the Seminole Reservation down in Florida, and bingo, actually. And then it spread to other reservations. And of course, the Navajo Nation has two, I think. I don't know. I don't gamble. It seems kind of silly to me. If I'm going to give my money away, I'd rather give it away to somebody I know and like than some vague gambler someplace. Compulsive gambling, like any other addiction, comes in two forms: problem gambling, gambling behavior that causes problems in individuals' life, either psychological, physical, sociological, or vocational. Pathological gambling, gambling behavior that is persistent and continual and significantly disrupts all aspects of an individual's life: psychological, physical, sociological, and vocational. The real difference between problem and pathological gamblers is often time and money. Problem gamblers can't afford to spend as much time and don't have the money to gamble as they want. They average losses of $3,000 per year. A pathological gambler spends far more time gambling and averages losses of $11,000 a year. The average debt for women entering Gamblers Anonymous is $60,000. The average debt for men entering Gamblers Anonymous is $100,000. Studies show that the problem and pathological gamblers lose 10 to 20 times as much as non-problem gamblers. In a study in Connecticut, 47% of the casino patrons were problem or pathological gamblers, even though they only comprised 5% of the population. In Minnesota in 1993, it was discovered that 2% of the population generated 63% of the state gambling revenues. Harvard Medical School studies estimated that 125 million people in the United States gamble. 2,200,000 of these individuals are pathological gamblers. 5,300,000 of these individuals are problem gamblers. This didn't take into account the 1,100,000 adolescent pathological gamblers. Male compulsive gamblers outnumber female compulsive gamblers by 2 to 3 times. This may be changing with the increase of casinos and slot machines, as women are more likely to use gambling to escape depression, trauma, or relationship problems. Pathological gamblers tend to have other addictions. 25 to 63% of pathological gamblers have other behavioral or substance addictions. One study found that 73% of pathological gamblers had alcohol problems. The same study found that 38% of pathological gamblers had a drug problem. 60% smoked, 50% had mood disorders, 41% had anxiety disorders, 60% had personality disorders. The group that has seen the greatest rise of gambling is among older adults. One survey of residential and assisted care facilities found that 16% went to casinos at least once a month. This behavior is exacerbated by casino-sponsored trips and day trips, which were found in two-thirds of the facilities. College students gamble at a higher percentage than any other group. 42% gamble, 26% gamble weekly or more frequently. Heavy college gamblers were more likely to be smokers, heavy drinkers, and or heavy marijuana users. These individuals averaged lower grades and more frequent absences. Different types of gamblers. Recreational social gamblers are able to separate gambling from the rest of their lives. For professional gamblers, their main source of income is gambling. And because of this, they are able and willing to take losses in their business. Antisocial gamblers may steal to gamble and have no conscience about the thievery and corruption that they represent. There are two subtypes of pathological and problem gamblers. Action-seeking gamblers are frenetic, excited, and are always seeking to escape. Escape-seeking gamblers are drawn to gambling machines and are often responsible people with good jobs. But they begin gambling to escape from their emotions or just escape boredom. The symptoms of persistent recurrent pathological gambling: preoccupation with gambling, reliving past gambling experiences, planning future gambling, increasing the amount of money used in gambling, unsuccessful attempts at stopping or curbing gambling, restlessness and irritability when not gambling, using gambling as an escape, chasing, trying to recoup past losses, lying about gambling, financing gambling through illegal acts, jeopardizing job, relationship, and education to gamble, expecting others to bail out the gambler's debt. This is the part that irritates me. They always think that somebody else should have to pay their debts. Winning phase in the beginning, the bets are small and they are happy just to win or break even. But as recreation becomes compulsion, the reward becomes more the stimulation of the action, and they seek to prolong the action as long as they possibly can. Winning becomes secondary to staying in the game. In 70 to 80% of the cases with compulsive gamblers, the beginning to their craving for gambling started with a big win. The gambler begins spending more time wagering, and their conversations are salted with lionizing their wins and, when mentioned, minimizing their losses. I had a friend. I paid him $100 a day to help me remodel my house in Montana, and I gave him $100 in cash every day. He went immediately to the casino, and every morning I'd ask him, "Well, how did you do last night?" He said, "I did great. I won $200." I said, "Wow, that's great. Well, how much do you have?" "Well, I don't have any of it. I lost it again." He would talk about how much money he won, but then he would always gamble it away. So he never had any money. He never. He worked with me for about almost 2 weeks. That's $1,400. He lost $1,400 plus all the money that he won while he was gambling it away. I mean, half the time he didn't even have enough money for food. So it's not like he took the $100 and he bought himself a good dinner and then he gambled whatever was left over. He gambled what he had left over and he didn't have any money for food. I had to feed him breakfast and lunch every day because he hadn't eaten. He doesn't Anyway, he lost all of his money. Losing phase. The losing phase begins with a losing streak, which is inevitable due to the simple laws of chance. Their large losses are met with larger wages to try to recoup their previous losses, and this is known as chasing. As the gambler continues to lose, they will dip into depression. They will seek isolation, become irritable, and lie about their situation. Desperation phase. In the desperation phase, the pathological gambler may lose their job, max out their credit cards, borrow money from friends and family, perhaps turn to illegal activities to hide their addiction, theft, embezzlement, drug dealing. The gambler may bankrupt their family and suffer divorce. I had a guy that came to my house when I was living in Salee, and he was he needed $20 to buy diapers for his little girl. Well, it's hard for me to say no. I don't. I can't help you feed and clothe your baby. So I gave him the $20. I saw him a couple weeks later, and I asked him about his kids. He said, "What kids?" Oh, yeah, right. He gambled it all away. Giving up phase. In the giving up phase, the gambler is no longer trying to recoup their losses, but seeks the game to stay in the action. 72% of gamblers experience depression when they hit bottom. Suicide attempts occurred in 17 to 24% of these gamblers when the bottom was hit. This is usually the time when the gambler seeks treatment when they hit bottom. For the compulsive gambler, it isn't the money that they are seeking, but the rush from the large win and the zoning out of the gambling that a gambling affords them. About one-third of compulsive gamblers recover on their own, usually triggered by devastating financial losses. For the other two-thirds who seek treatment, the techniques used include antidepressant therapy, anti-craving drugs like naltrexone, and Gamblers Anonymous. Compulsive shoppers and hoarders have the same cravings as do gamblers and drug addicts, but in this, the high is caused by the feeling they get when they purchase an item. 74% of the time, compulsive buyers purchase items on impulse. 50% of the household income from these compulsive shoppers goes to paying their shopping debts. Compulsive shoppers tend to buy items that enhance their sense of uniqueness. Women buy jewelry, clothes, and cosmetics. Men buy high-tech electronics and sporting equipment. Depression seems to be the main impetus behind their compulsive shopping. It seems worse during the winter holidays, so this is the time when they accrue 40% of their debt. Antidepressants reduce their urge to compulsive shop. I had, my brother-in-law. It wasn't really my brother-in-law. My wife's sister's husband. Let's call him my brother-in-law. He had the most expensive fishing equipment you ever saw. Now, the weird part was he never went fishing, but he owned a boat, a motor for the boat, all of this technical gear. But he never went fishing because he worked all the time. He was a workaholic. But that's what he did. Um, it's just kind of strange. Collecting, accumulating, and hoarding are offshoots of compulsive shopping. The individuals gain self worth and self esteem from the objects that they own. These collectors and hoarders may buy valuable items, contemporary fads, or accumulate valueless items. There are cases of people who are unable to throw newspapers and magazines away. People will also hoard animals. Cats, dogs, and birds have been known. People have been known to have all of those creatures. Yeah, that's what it looks like in a hoarder's house. If you've ever been in a hoarder's house. When I was working in the emergency room, I had to go over one time. They had a call. This is in Omaha. This lady had collapsed, and we needed to get her out of the house. She was having a heart attack, and we needed to get her to the hospital. But the problem was she's back in her back bedroom, and she was a path person. She lived with somebody, but she had so much crap stuff in her house, and it looked just like this, and it stunk. Oh my God, they had cats and newspapers, and the cats would pee on the newspapers, of course. But we had to get her out, and so what we did, we lashed her to a hand litter, and we carried her out that way. It was the only way that we could get her out. She was a big lady anyway, wasn't especially that fat, but it was there wasn't enough room to get a gurney in there. I mean, we would have had to have cleaned out the whole house. So we lashed her to and that's one of the reasons they took me, because I'm small and I'm strong. Anyway, it took, well, it was tough. It was really, really tough. I had one end of the litter, and this big guy had the other end. And there were places where he and the litter couldn't fit, and we had to get her out. Now, the funny part, and this isn't that funny, but she was a lawyer, famous lawyer from Omaha. 1980, 15, and the judge, last time she had gone into court, the judge had kicked her out because she smelled bad. And it was mostly rotten food. It was cat urine on all of her stuff. It was nasty. In 1980, 15% of the adult, she lived in a mansion. That was the strange part. And the place was just full, just full. In 1980, 15% of the adult population in the United States were considered obese. By 2005, 33% of the adult U.S. population were considered obese. Tragically, only 33% of the adult population are of normal weight. The average height of the United States female is 5'4" with a weight of 164 pounds. The average model in the United States is 5'9" with a weight of 110 pounds. And that's what somebody that is 5'4" and weighs 164 pounds looks like. And that's what somebody that's 5'9" and weighs 110 pounds looks like. So you can see that models and the normal people do not look the same. There we go, same thing. 5'4", 164 pounds. Really proud of herself. She's probably lost weight. And there's what a model looks like. Same thing. Skinny, skinny, skinny on the right. Bigger on the left. I mean, they look okay. I mean, they look presentable, but the models don't. The models look anorexic. Now here's the bizarre part. Look at the gap between their thighs. Oops, I'm sorry. The gap, especially hers. That's not right. That's not normal. Your thighs are supposed to be larger than that. And women accumulate fat in their thighs anyway, but that gap is not right. There are 3 eating disorders: anorexia nervosa, body image distortion, and an addiction to lose weight. Bulimia nervosa, eating excessive amounts of food and then controlling weight by purging, vomiting, fasting, or excessive exercise. And binge eating disorder, eating excessive amounts of food with no attempt at weight control. And that's what this guy is doing. That's a lot of food. Compulsive eaters feel powerless when dealing with food. These individuals tend to be obsessed with food. They use food to escape undesirable feelings such as boredom and depression. They are secretive behavior. They have secretive behavior, guilt, denial. They continue overeating behavior despite the harm that they are doing to themselves. Eating disorders seem to be a combination of genetic, neurochemical, psychological development, and sociocultural factors. And if you're eating in the bathroom, then you know that you've got a problem. That's not the place where you're supposed to eat. It's actually not a very healthy place to eat for a lot of different reasons. 9.3% of the U.S. adult population is diabetic. That's 19,300,000 people. 26% of the U.S. adult population are at risk for diabetes. That's 54 million people. 15.5% of American Indian adults has diabetes. 10% of the African American adult population has diabetes. 6.5% of the Mexican American adult population has diabetes. And 5.6% of white adults have diabetes. It's a lot of people. It is not uncommon for someone with an eating disorder to have a co-occurring disorder as well. 12 to 18% of anorexics abuse alcohol, tobacco, amphetamines, prescription drugs, or over-the-counter substances. 30 to 70% of bulimics abuse tobacco, alcohol, amphetamines, prescription drugs, or over-the-counter substances. This is Kaylee Cuoco. She's not really anorexic. I don't think she's bulimic. She exercises a lot. She's into yoga. But for the first couple of years of the Big Bang Theory, she abused a substance known as Afrin. Afrin is a nasal spray, and it clears your nostrils. She was obsessed with not sounding nasal, so she would clear her nose when she possibly could. Now the problem is that if you use Afrin for 4 or 5 straight days, then it can cause hemorrhaging in your nose, and that's the problem that she had. She had frequent nosebleeds. I think that's why I put this picture in here. She's not anorexic or bulimic that I'm aware of. Most eating disorders begin during adolescence and tend to be chronic and affect women more than men. 3% of women suffer from one of the 3 eating disorders. In high school, 33% of girls and 16% of boys show symptoms of one of the eating disorders. This is Snooki. I think that's her name. She was on Jersey Shore. This is her in high school, and as you can see, she's pretty skinny. That's what she looked like in high school. Her television show, this is what she looked like. And as far as I'm concerned, she looks pretty good. And this is what she this is what she looks like now. She lost all that weight. Well, people got real upset because she went from looking like this. Actually, she went from looking like this to looking like this to looking like this. Now that she's had children, she's no longer anorexic. She eats better. One of the frightening statistics dealing with anorexia is the age of the onset that has dropped from 13 years to 9 years. Third grade girls are starting to diet and starve themselves to look thin. Anorexics seem to have a fear of gaining weight. These individuals tend to have a tendency to perfectionism and a low self-esteem. Death rates for anorexics range from 4 to 20%. This young lady is anorexic. I was talking about the thigh gap. For a long time, for a while there, when social media started, they had these websites that supported anorexia, that supported this idea that you needed to be skinny. Well, you can look at her thighs. There's a gap between her thighs, and that's called a thigh gap. And what they tried to do was to get girls to take pictures with their knees together, and if there's a gap between their 2 thighs, then they were thought to be properly skinny. The reality is that this gap between your thighs is genetic. It doesn't have anything to do, well, it does. You have to be really skinny or slender, I'm sorry. You have to be really slender to have a thigh gap, but most people can't have a thigh gap. That's one of the reasons why Snooky in this picture is crossing her legs, because she's not one of those people that genetically has a thigh gap. She's actually a Peruvian. She is indigenous, and um, she's from Peru. She was adopted into the United States, and she has that ancestry, that native ancestry, that indigenous ancestry from Peru, and that's why she's actually darker complexioned. She had no problem. Most of those guys, most of the people on Jersey Shore, the men were bodybuilders to some extent, and the girls worked in a tanning salon, I think. Anyway, Snooky never needed to tan because she had a natural um, darkness in her skin tone. But the other girls did. They were Italians, and even Italians who are darker complexion than, I don't know, Scandinavians. They have to tan, but Snooky never did. I don't know why I'm talking about these things. Anyway, the thigh gap, that is not right. Bulimia nervosa is a disorder characterized by binge eating and the obsessively ridding oneself of the food that has been eaten. They do this through vomiting, laxatives, diuretics, and excessive exercise. Bulimia actually means ox hunger, as in hungry enough to eat an ox. When binging, these individuals eat as if they were famished to the point of uncomfortably distending their stomachs. These individuals are notorious for eating and purging in secret. Bulimic will often have secret stashes of forbidden food stashed away throughout their house that they can eat in private and purge quickly. And that's one of the reasons why they have food in the bathroom. For a while, they were taking pictures of individuals, and they called it pregnant stomach, where their stomach was so distended from eating so much food that they looked like they were pregnant. And of course, they put these pictures on the internet, and then it became popular with bulimics to try to eat as much food as they possibly could to distend their stomach, and then they would take selfies of themselves, and they would take selfies and publish them online, and this became a fad. I think it's over with, but you never know. Much of the cause of bulimia in particular and eating disorders in general stems from perceptions of acceptable appearance for females on television. When television was introduced to Fiji, 3% of the women on the island vomited to stay slender. 3 years later, the percentage of vomiters was 15%. That's just from watching television. Fashion models maintain a body weight 13 to 19% below that of women that they are modeling the clothes for. And of course, you can see how the sunken cheeks and whatnot. And if she put her legs together, I'm sure she would have a thigh gap. She's very tall and she's very slender. She should have played volleyball, anyway, or basketball. While binging and purging may occur millions of times a week around the United States, it is not without its negative effects. Dental complications, greater possibility of alcohol abuse, greater possibility of drug abuse, high rates of depression, greater risk of suicide, stomach acid burns to the esophagus and the throat, loss of tooth enamel, heart problems such as arrhythmias, menstrual problems, and electrolyte imbalances. Binge eating disorder has become an international problem. For the first time in the history of humanity, there are as many people in the world who are overweight as those who are underweight. In the United States, where obesity is defined as more than 30 pounds over one's ideal weight, obesity has increased from 15% in 1980 to 33% in 2005. Binge eating disorder affects 4.6% of the population at large. Binge eating is eating until the individual is uncomfortably full. People tend to be eating in response to the emotional states rather than to true hunger signals. These individuals tend to have frequent episodes of eating large quantities of food, feeling a lack of control where food is concerned, eating rapidly and swallowing food without chewing, eating despite being uncomfortably full, eating when not feeling hungry, eating away from others so that they won't see their volume of intake, feeling disgusted because of the lack of control of food, having a preference for high carbohydrates and foods with high fat content. In other words, junk food. Binge and compulsive eaters do not seem to know how to pace themselves, eating rapidly and in massive amounts until they feel painfully uncomfortable. Each eating may be done to control anxiety. Such eating may be done to control anxiety. Food seems to have a calming and sedating effect on some people. Adolescents, which makes sense. I mean, if it's got fat in it, the fat's got tryptophan. Tryptophan is a precursor to serotonin. Adolescents who eat when they are depressed are twice as likely to suffer from obesity or bulimia. They are also twice as likely to suffer from anorexia. Compulsive overeaters are more likely to suffer from high blood pressure, high cholesterol, circulatory problems, heart disease, type 2 diabetes. 15 million Americans have type 2 diabetes, sleep apnea, gallbladder disease, gout, arthritis, 15 to 60% greater risk of cancer. They exhibit high rates of depression. They become distressed and develop a negative body image. They allow their self-esteem to suffer badly. Sexual addiction is marked by sexual behavior that the individual has little control over and little choice. This type of behavior might be practiced by young or old, gay or straight, and male or female. The addiction not only includes sexual contact with another individual, but arousal through masturbation, viewing pornography, serial affairs, phone sex, visits to topless bars, visits to strip shows. Sometimes sexual addiction can involve illegal activities such as prostitution, sexual harassment, sexual abuse, exhibitionism, this is a picture of a man displaying himself to a young female. And of course, what he's looking for is this face right there, that shock that she sees when she sees his penis. Child molestation, rape, and incest are all illegal activities. By 2007, there were over 4 million pornographic sites on the internet. 40 million Americans visit these sites regularly. 70% of the visits are during work hours. 10% of the people surfing the porno sites are addicted to online pornography and spend up to 8 hours a day viewing sexual material. Worldwide, the pornography industry clears $57 billion a year. In the United States, the pornographic industry clears $12 billion a year. Much of the pornography is filmed and photographed in the San Fernando Valley outside of Los Angeles, also known as the Valley. 3 to 6% of U.S. population are sex addicts. 80% of sex addicts are male. Sexual addiction usually starts in the teen years and then peaks between ages 20 and 40, after which it slowly declines. Sexual addicts seem to suffer from other addictions in conjunction with their sexual problem. The DSM-5 identifies several paraphilias: exhibitionism, which is displaying yourself. Usually it's a male displaying themselves to a female. Fetishism can include lots of different things. Getting sexually excited because coming in contact with leather or rubber. There's tons of different fetishes. Freiturism, which is getting sexual gratification from rubbing up against another individual. This is something that might happen in a train, a crowded subway train, or whatever. Pedophilia is being sexually excited by children. Sexual masochism is liking to be hurt by another individual. Sexual sadism is liking to hurt other individuals. That's one of the reasons why we put them together. Sadomasochism is one person likes to hurt people and the other person likes to be hurt. Transvestic fetishism means dressing like the opposite sex. So it would be a woman dressing in man's clothes. It'd be a man dressing in women's clothes. It's usually a man dressing in women's clothes. And voyeurism. This is voyeurism. He's watching this lady undress. This is from the movie Psycho. Other sexual addictions include love addiction, the desire to fall in love and be in love, relationship addiction, the need to be in a relationship with an individual. They may mean maintaining multiple relationships at any one time. Once upon a time, I was foolish enough to get in a relationship with a woman that had relationship addiction. She always kept a guy on the side. And unfortunately, I was the guy on the side. I didn't recognize. Well, they don't know. I mean, they're really good at hiding things. Anyway, yeah, men do this too. Well, of course they do. Probably more than women. But unfortunately, I got in that relationship. Individuals suffering from any sexual addiction maintain a little, if any, control over their behavior despite adverse consequences. The individual will continue to obsess over the behavior to the distraction of everything else. Compulsive sexual behavior is repeated because of the release of the pleasure-inducing neurotransmitters, dopamine, enkephalin, and endorphin. Tolerance to these neurotransmitters leads to a need for the addict to spend more and more time in their sexual activity to gain the same mental benefits. Damage can be done to careers, relationships, self-image, and peace of mind. The sexual addiction becomes a driving force in the addict's life. Part of the drive for the addict may be the risk that they are taking to achieve their target behavior. Usually the addict will culminate the behavior through orgasm, though in some cases it may involve exposure or fondling. That's exposure to another individual or fondling another individual, not fondling yourself. The trigger behavior is often followed by remorse, guilt, fear of discovery, and resolution to stop the behavior. The sexual behavior is often pursued with a sense of desperation, self-loathing, despair, and low self-image. Internet addicts seem to have no control over their need to log on. While the internet didn't really begin until 1993, today 4.5 billion people worldwide, there are over 7 billion people in the world, are connected to the internet. 15 to 20% of the 1 billion people have high-speed connections. In Canada and the United States, 90% of the populations are connected to the internet. The three main uses of the internet are gaming, seeking erotic material, and gambling. The internet is anonymous and expensive, controlled by the user, validating, rewarding, convenient, and escapist. Symptoms of internet addiction include logging on at every chance at home or work. Non-addicts log on an average of 8 hours a week. Addicts may log on 40 plus hours a week. Obsessing about the internet, feeling irritable and anxious when not online. Time online increases to make the individual feel they have had enough. Losing track of time when online. Neglecting responsibilities to be online. Allowing relationships to deteriorate with spouses, coworkers, family, and friends. Posting more messages and downloading more and more data. Eating in front of the monitor. Checking email frequently, more than once a day. And that's so one of the problems I have is I don't check my email very often. Very often. Sometimes I'll check it a couple times a day, but and I need to check it because I'm in class. Anyway, sometimes it'll be 24 hours, 36 hours before I return your emails, and that's because I do not have an internet addiction, and I don't check my emails frequently enough, I guess. Some internet addicts seek oblivion, wanting to zone out, while others seek frequent or constant interaction. Physical symptoms of internet overuse include blurred vision, chronic lack of sleep, twitching mouse fingers, relationship problems. The list of internet addictions include cybersexual addiction, computer relationship addiction, internet compulsions, information addiction, and computer games addiction. Computer relationship addiction entails individuals dealing more and more in their online fantasy world. They pull more and more away from their real relationships until they lose them. Eventually, the addict's cyber world replaces and becomes the most important aspect of their life. For online gamers, the game might start offline, and then as they improve, they need the competition of the online games. Like any other online addiction, gamers lose track of time while they are playing. Some gamers will spend every free moment gaming. Men, teenagers, and children play online more than any other groups, whereas non-addicts will spend 20 to 60 minutes playing a game. A gamer will average 6 hours a day in their games. For the last 60 years, the most frightening non-substance addiction was television addiction. TV addicts may easily spend 6 to 8 hours a day watching. 60% of American homes contain 3 or more televisions. In many American homes, the television is on longer than their lights. The benchmarks for TV addiction: compulsive use, making the individual a couch potato, using television to change one's mood, sedative or antidepressant, craving use, loss of control, continued use despite adverse consequences, development of tolerance. The average adolescent watches TV for 1,500 hours a year as compared to 900 hours of school. The shows that an addict watches skews how they see reality and leads them to make poor decisions. Since television shows dysfunction as normal, adolescents have a hard time accepting their own culture as real. Commercials for fast food may lead to compulsive fatty food consumption. News focus on negative events leads the individual to skew towards seeing the world as an especially dangerous place. A study in New Zealand showed that the more the children watched television between ages 5 and 15, the less likely they were to graduate from high school or go to college. There are over 260 million cell phone users in the United States. There's probably more now. There are over 6 billion cell phone users around the world. Calling and texting takes up a large part of a teenager's day to the exclusion of studying or engaging in face-to-face relationships. And I can tell you, after being in classes in Clinton, Iowa, and in Saley, Arizona, I can tell you that it's gotten worse. Kids cannot not be on their phones. It kind of drives you crazy. And some instructors make people get off their phones. I don't really do that. I just kind of watch people as they compulsively check their phones. Sometimes we won't go into that. Anyway, yeah, that's I don't mind being online, teaching online, because sometimes the classroom is kind of depressing. Sometimes people will take calls and they don't come back. Everything's more important than class. And that's the end of the chapter. It's been a long chapter. Anyway, I'll see you next week. Next week we'll tackle something that doesn't have to do with